Imagine every scientific discovery from the last 2,000 years. Gone. Not stolen. Not hidden. Just gone. No record. No copy. No trace.
That's what almost happened in a burning warehouse on the docks of Alexandria, Egypt, in the year 48 BCE.
You've probably heard this story already. One library, one fire, one night. Everything burned.
Here's what almost nobody tells you. That fire didn't destroy the Library of Alexandria.
Not even close. The library kept running for another 440 years after that night, through the entire rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
So if that one famous fire didn't kill it, what did?
The real answer is more disturbing than any single blaze. It's a story about budget cuts, about political neglect, a slow, quiet abandonment that took 7 centuries, roughly the same span of time separating you, right now, from the Magna Carta.
Think about that.
That's what happened to the greatest library the ancient world ever built.
I need to tell you right now, the story you know is basically a myth. The truth is stranger, slower, and honestly a lot more disturbing.
This is the real story of the Library of Alexandria.
We will find out. Down the well.
To understand why Alexandria happened, you have to understand the world before it. In the 4th century BCE, knowledge already existed everywhere. Athens had its philosophy schools, Plato's Academy, Aristotle's Lyceum.
Babylon had centuries of astronomical records. Egypt's temples held archives stretching back millennia. Persia held administrative records across an empire that stretched from Egypt to Indus Valley.
None of it was connected. A Greek geometer had no access to Babylonian star charts. An Egyptian physician had no access to Greek medical theory.
Knowledge was scattered, regional, fragile, dependent on whichever temple or court happened to preserve it.
Then, in about 13 years, one man conquered nearly all of it.
"331 BCE, Alexander the Great stands on the coast of Egypt, points at an empty piece of land, and says, 'Build it here.'
He never saw what it became. He died in 323 BCE, at just 32, with no clear heir, before the city was even finished.
His empire didn't pass to a son. It was carved up by his own generals, the Diadochi, the successors.
One of them, Ptolemy I, called Soter,
Took Egypt for himself, made Alexandria his capital, and founded a new ruling dynasty in 305 BCE.
That was Ptolemy's exact problem. He was a Macedonian ruling Egyptians. He needed to look like more than just a warlord who got lucky.
So he, and the 2 kings who came after him, invested in something no one could argue with. The greatest research institution the world had ever seen. They called it the Mausion, literally a shrine to the muses. It's where we get our word museum. But don't picture a museum. Picture something closer to a fully funded, state-run research halls and zoological gardens, an observatory, scholars housed, fed, and paid by the crown.
And at its heart, the library.
Historians still debate exactly which king gets credit for the founding. Some sources point to Ptolemy I himself, others to his son. What's clearer is how it grew. Ptolemy I likely laid the groundwork, possibly advised by Demetrius of Phalerum, an exiled Athenian statesman who'd studied under Aristotle.
Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, is credited by most historians with the library's real explosion into the era's dominant research center. And Ptolemy III, Euergetes, kept the obsession going for a third generation.
3 kings, 3 generations, one shared idea. What if a single city could hold all the world's knowledge? Not some of it, all of it. Modern historians see 3 overlapping reasons behind it. Political legitimacy, proving the dynasty were the true heirs of Greek civilization.
Practical statecraft. Better astronomy meant better navigation. Better medicine meant a healthier court and army. And concentrating talent, paying scholars' salaries, didn't just collect books, it collected people, pulling the era's sharpest minds toward one city.
His answer to, "How do I prove I deserve this throne?" wasn't more soldiers. It was building something no rival kingdom could match.
And once they had the institution, they wanted it full.
What these kings were willing to do to fill those shelves is where the story turns from ambitious to a little ruthless. That's next.
Here's where the story gets a little disturbing.
These kings didn't just buy books. Ancient accounts describe them taking them. Every ship that docked in Alexandria's harbor could be searched. If a scroll was found on board, it was confiscated. The owner got a copy back, a handwritten duplicate. The original stayed in Alexandria forever.
Some accounts even nickname these seized texts ship books, though that's a colorful label from later writers, not a formal ancient term you should treat as strictly literal.
They didn't stop at ships. Ptolemy III borrowed Athens' official state copies of the great tragedians Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides against a massive cash deposit.
Then simply kept the originals and forfeited the money.
They wanted everything: Greek, Egyptian, Babylonian, Jewish, Persian. They translated it, they cataloged it, they preserved it.
One famous product of this obsession, the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, the Septuagint, is traditionally linked to Alexandria's scholarly community. And organizing this flood of scrolls fell to one man, Callimachus of Cyrene, who built the Pinakies, a massive catalog system, arguably one of the first in world history.
So, how big did it get?
You've probably heard 400,000 scrolls. Some sources say 700,000. Others say closer to 40,000. These numbers come from ancient writers working centuries later, and they don't agree with each other.
And honestly,
That gap tells you something important all by itself, which means we really don't know exactly how much was lost. But before we get to the destruction, you need to understand what was actually here. Not just scrolls, people.
It worked in this world. Here, he compiled the elements, a geometry textbook so complete it was still being taught, almost unchanged, in American classrooms into the 20th century. Eratosthenes, chief librarian, calculated the entire circumference of the Earth. No satellites, no GPS, just shadows, 2 Egyptian cities, and geometry. His result landed remarkably close to the real number.
Aristarchus of Samos stood in this tradition and said, "The sun is the center, not the earth." Almost 18 centuries before Copernicus, almost nobody believed him.
Herophilus and Erasistratus performed some of the earliest documented systematic human dissections in the Western world. Mapping the nervous system and arguing the brain, not the heart, was the seat of thought.
at the far end of this lineage, nearly 7 centuries after the library's founding, Hypatia of Alexandria, mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, one of the most respected intellectuals of her era, teaching in a city that, by then, was tearing itself apart over religion and power.
In 415 CE, she was murdered by a mob during a period of intense political and religious conflict in the city.
Historians still debate exactly how much her death was about her scholarship versus the political rivalries she got caught in the middle of.
But she's remembered, fairly or not, as one of the last visible symbols of Alexandria's fading golden age.
Think about what this city actually was. These people lived in the same neighborhoods. They argued. They built on each other's ideas. This is the ancient equivalent of the internet, except instead of clicking a link, you had to be a genius just to get inside the building.
Okay, now, the part you've been waiting for. Who burned it down?
Suspect number 1, Julius Caesar, 48 BCE. During a war inside Alexandria's harbor, Caesar ordered his own ships torched to block an enemy fleet.
The fire spread onto the docks.
Warehouses burned. Some scrolls, maybe a few thousand feet, were almost certainly destroyed.
But the main library, deep in the royal quarter, writers after Caesar's time describe scholarly life in Alexandria continuing for centuries.
Verdict: Caesar did not destroy the Library of Alexandria.
Suspect number 2, Caliph Umar, 642 CE. The legend says, after the Arab conquest, Caliph Umar ordered every remaining book burned,
reasoning that if a book agreed with the Quran, it was unnecessary, and if it disagreed, it was dangerous taste, so burn it either way.
Dramatic, quotable. There is not enough evidence for this. This story first appears roughly 500 years later, written by a 13th century bishop named Bar Hebraeus. No source from the actual 7th century, Muslim, Christian or otherwise, mentions it at all.
Verdict: it is likely a myth created several centuries after the event.
So what actually happened? Here's the answer nobody wants. Because it doesn't make a clean villain story.
Nobody did it, and everyone did. Around 270 CE, the Emperor Aurelian fought forces loyal to the breakaway Palmyrene Empire, led in the region by Queen Zenobia, right through Alexandria's royal quarter. The fighting badly damaged the district where the library stood. No dramatic villain, just war, and the library caught in the middle of it. Then, in 391 CE, Emperor Theodosius I banned pagan worship across the Roman Empire. In Alexandria, a mob acting under Bishop Theophilus destroyed the Serapeum, home to the library's overflow daughter collection. Whatever scrolls remained there were lost, though exactly how many scrolls were still there by that point is genuinely disputed among historians. And underneath all of it, the quietest killer of all, funding. As Roman priorities shifted, royal and imperial money for the library slowly dried up. Scholars weren't replaced. New scrolls stopped arriving. The great minds drifted to newer centers like Constantinople.
Not one fire, not one villain, not one night.
Just an extremely slow, extremely quiet disappearance, spread across nearly 700 years.
So what did we actually lose?
Of the roughly 90 plays Sophocles is believed to have written, 7 survive complete. Of Euripides' 90-plus plays, 19 survive. But here's the honest caveat. This Massive loss happened across the entire ancient Mediterranean world over centuries, because every single text had to be hand-copied over and over on fragile material, just to survive at all. Alexandria's decline made this worse. It wasn't the sole cause. It's not accurate to blame every lost ancient text on one library burning down. We do know this mathematical ideas we'd rediscover centuries later. Astronomical observations we'd have to reconstruct from scratch. It's an oversimplification to say the Middle Ages happened because Alexandria fell. History is more complicated than that. But the loss of concentrated, organized knowledge absolutely mattered to how slowly some ideas resurfaced.
Alexandria's ideas didn't all die with it, though. Euclid's geometry traveled through Islamic scholars at Baghdad's House of Wisdom, then into medieval Europe, then into American classrooms.
Claudius Ptolemy's astronomy shaped both Islamic and European science for over 1,000 years.
Callimus's cataloging system is a direct ancestor of how your local library, or the Library of Congress, organizes its shelves today.
In 2002, Egypt and UNESCO opened the Bibliotheca Aligno, the original building's exact form or location, but a tribute.
Here's the question I actually want to leave you with.
We love villains, Caesar, Umar, a mob with torches, because a villain makes the story simple. One moment, one person, one night you can point to.
But the Library of Alexandria didn't die that way. It died the way most great things die.
Slowly, quietly, with no announcement.
A little less funding here. A scholar who left and was never replaced. A political shift that valued power over knowledge. Generation after generation. Until one day nobody was left to turn the lights back on. And nobody even wrote down the exact date it finally happened.
That should scare you a little.
Because right now in America, we have our own Library of Alexandria, the Library of Congress, university research labs, NASA's archives, national science funding. None of it is guaranteed to survive 2,000 years, or even 200. It survives exactly as long as each generation decides it's worth protecting.
The Library of Alexandria isn't remembered because it burned in one dramatic instant.
It's remembered because it represents something we still recognize today, the fear that knowledge, once gathered, can slip away, not always to fire, but to neglect.
And the hope that it can somehow be built again. What does our civilization have right now that some future generation will call their Alexandria? What are we failing to protect right now without even noticing? I'll leave you with that and see you next week.
Hit subscribe. Mysteries of Time drops deep dives every week. Smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you'd think. And drop a comment about what we discovered. I read every single comment.